Hey everybody, this is Chuck Marone with Strong Towns. I was recently asked a question about property values going up in a neighborhood and whether that would lead to housing unaffordability. It was along the lines of like, hey Chuck, you're always talking about building wealth in neighborhoods. You're always talking about productivity, making properties more valuable. Isn't that just going to make housing less affordable? Well, I'm going to liberate you today from the big project mentality that is holding you back. So stick with me here. Let's look at that and take the opposite for a second, because there's really three outcomes when we look at neighborhood investment. If you say, hey Chuck, if you invest in neighborhoods, if you make them wealthier, if you make them more productive, if you make them more valuable places, that's just going to make them unaffordable. What's the opposite of that then? Well, it's stagnation or decline, right? Let's withhold investment. Let's not invest in these places. Let's allow these places to be junkier, more run down, less valuable, less productive. I'm going to posit to you that that's a pretty, dare I say, elitist way of thinking of things. We'll let your neighborhood be crap. We'll let your neighborhood be really junky because if we didn't, you couldn't afford to live there. This is just a dead-end way of thinking. It is the ultimate top-down, I think I know better than you kind of way of looking at things. There's nobody who is poor, who lives in a poor neighborhood, who says, yes, I want neglect. Yes, I want decline. Yes, I want stagnation. Let's get that thought out of our brains because it's really dumb. Here's how we get to this really dumb thought, though. It's because we are limited to only thinking about things in terms of big projects, big steps, big moves, big changes. We have constructed our economy today to, in situations like this, particularly when it comes to housing, give neighborhoods what my co-writer in Escaping the Housing Trap called a trickle or a fire hose of capital. You either get no capital, you get no money, you get no investment, you get no value improvement, or you get a fire hose of capital. This is the top-down model. This is the big government model. This is the big Wall Street model. This is the big corporate model. What we're going to do is we'll declare your neighborhood an opportunity zone. We'll set up a TIF project. We'll do some type of major investment to flood lots and lots of capital into the neighborhood. And by doing that, we will make it more valuable. We will improve it. They use all of our kind of language around that, right? The only thing is that obviously that comes with new people. That comes with displacing the old people and bringing in new, and I will say the way that this is often framed, better people into our neighborhood. No more of these rundown places, no more of the people associated with that. Now we will have shiny new stuff. And hey, maybe we will throw a bone to our consciences by saying, hey, a certain number of those have to be affordable or below market rate. This does nothing for housing affordability either. I mean, maybe a couple people will win the lottery and get in a lower rate unit in a gentrified neighborhood. But what that means is that everybody else's homes are just going to be more expensive to subsidize that investment. This drives this cycle of upward expense and unaffordability. I said I would liberate you from some thinking. The place where we are stuck is that we only think in terms of these big transformative projects. We only think in terms of coming in with large amounts of capital. But the reality is, like, I'm sitting here looking at this block. This is a gorgeous, gorgeous block. In fact, let me turn around. This is one of my favorite blocks in my hometown. The homes are just beautiful. I was not going to go this way to work, but I'll go this way today because I like this neighborhood so much. There are, let me count them, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 homes on this side of the street. And there are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 homes on the other side of the street. They're nice little houses. They're kind of quaint. They fit in with the neighborhood really well. People here take nice care of them. These are not, let me just say this, these are not super expensive homes. Now, I live in a small town and, we're a couple hours north of Minneapolis, St. Paul. It's not exactly the epicenter of housing demand in the country, But still, you know, we've seen rapid price increases. We've seen unaffordability. Our incomes here are pretty low. So by the relation of our incomes, these are pretty expensive. But when I look at these, what I see is the backyards in all of them. There's garages back there. I mean, all of these places I'm looking have a garage. All these places have room to build more stuff on these lots. Here, we're even coming up to the corner. There's a vacant property here. Oh no, it's just pushed way back. There's plenty of room here on the corner for another unit. What happens here so often is that we say, nope, the only way you can transform a neighborhood like this is to come in with massive amounts of capital. But the reality is you could take a block with 10 homes and over the next decade, over the next 2 decades, make it a house of 20 homes or 30 homes, simply by allowing people to convert these into duplexes, to add backyard cottages, to add secondary units on the backyard, to subdivide them in ways that would today be considered irregular. There are lots and lots of ways to thicken up this neighborhood and add lots and lots of units. Now, this is going to make the neighborhood more valuable. It's going to make it more productive. It's going to add financial success for the city. It's not going to result in dislocation, and it's not going to result in a median home price being higher. In fact, quite to the contrary. You do this not just on that block, but on this block, on the next block, on all these blocks. And what you're going to see is that, yes, there will be individual units that get much higher. The neighborhood is going to become a nicer place. You're going to see the top end units become really, really much more valuable. But what you're going to see is a lot more affordable units sprinkled in throughout the neighborhood. A huge number of units that people can afford to get into, layered in, kind of feathered in amongst the whole neighborhood. This is how you get to massive amounts of housing. This is how you get to housing affordability naturally built in. This is how you build neighborhoods without dislocating people. And this is how, at the end of the day, you have a city become wealthier and more successful. And you have building patterns that are more productive, stuff that we can now afford to maintain and take care of without making housing unaffordable. Go out and build incrementally. There's a lot of people who want to say, Chuck, incremental means slow, and I did a video earlier about how the fact that incremental does not mean slow. Incremental is the fastest way to build the most number of units without gentrification, without dislocation, at prices that people can afford. We should be doing this in every single neighborhood. In fact, one of the Strong Towns core campaigns is incremental housing everywhere. There should be no neighborhood where you cannot build the next increment of development intensity.